The Philippines suspends the deployment of Filipino workers to Sri Lanka amid escalating protests over an economic crisis. The country's latest COVID-19 alert level classifications have been extended pending a review by the Pandemic Task Force. And several groups welcomed the move of U.S. lawmakers to block aid to the Philippine National Police over human rights concerns. Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's a roundup of stories we're watching now. I'm Riza Diaz. We begin the newscast with the U.S. House of Representatives voting to stop providing aid to the Philippine National Police. An amendment to a Defense Spending Act provides that no funding will be made available unless human rights concerns are addressed. Let's get more insights on this from Phil Robertson. He's Deputy Director of Human Rights. He's joining us via Zoom. Sir Robertson, good evening.
Evening.
Sir, we'd like to know several groups and agencies, including the Commission on Human Rights, have welcomed this move by U.S. lawmakers. I would like to get your reaction on this.
Well, we think this is a very good step forward. And really, frankly, this is long overdue. Congressman Susan Wild's amendment will require a report by the State Department that focuses on human rights violations committed by the Philippines police, military, and paramilitary forces, and also require them to assess those forces' roles in the current Philippines human rights climate. And this is the exact kind of report that the Congress should be asking for. They should be making the U.S. State Department do its job to report independently on rights abuses in the Philippines. And by going forward with that report, obviously the government will have its opportunity to present its information to those people compiling the report, and so will Philippine civil society and organizations like Human Rights Watch that I represent. So it's a good process. It should be encouraged. And without by saying that there's going to be no aid to the Philippines police unless the administration, the Biden administration, has certified that the Philippines government is meeting basic human rights standards, well, that's a good step too. We think that's very important. We're talking about the ability of labor organizers, journalists, human rights defenders, critics of the governments, others, faith and religious leaders, civil society activists, all these people, they need to be able to operate freely and without violence or intimidation. And that is exactly what that amendment will require. Otherwise, there will be no aid to the Philippines National Police.
Mm-hmm. Sir, the administration of former President Duterte claimed that it had undertaken process into the alleged police abuses. Do you agree? What's your take?
I'm sorry, that's really a bit of a joke, frankly. I mean, the government itself admits that 6,252 people have been killed by police drug war ops. Guess how many cases have resulted in the conviction of police officers? Just one. The case of Kian de los Santos. It's ridiculous. The allegation that somehow the Philippines government is actively investigating this is really not believed by the international community. The latest is the Department of Justice says it's reviewing 52 cases involving 154 policemen, but it's been reviewing these cases forever and ever. And this was the same information that they presented to the International Criminal Court to argue that there should be a deferral of the ICC investigation. And finally, the ICC prosecutor's office called time, correctly pointing out that the Philippines was playing for time. This is a game for the Philippines government. So now it's time to get serious about investigations. And if the Philippines is not prepared to do it, which is quite clear the government is not, the international community, starting with the International Criminal Court and backed by the U.S. and others, will do it.
Mm-hmm. So, Phil, has a move like this happened before? And what are the chances that this proposed amendment by the U.S. lawmakers will move forward and be approved?
Well, it's been approved by the House of Representatives. I am not quite clear right now what will happen in the U.S. Senate, but this is a bill, the National Defense Authorization Act, which does really have to move through the process every year. So I expect it's very likely we will end up with some strong language on the Philippines and on accountability for human rights abuses. And I think that, certainly we and others will be pushing for that. So I think that there's a fair opportunity that something will pass that will, put this requirement into law and really make the PNP and the government hold people accountable for these extrajudicial executions that have been carried out in the name of the drug war.
You mentioned accountability, sir. Would like to know your expectations as to the administration of President Bongbong Marcos Jr. when it comes to monitoring and protecting human rights.
Well, that's a good question. So far, Bongbong Marcos and his administration have been a bit of a closed book that no one can really read on human rights issues. He wasn't very clear during the campaign about where he stood on these issues. So right now we're looking as a big indicator of what his human rights policy will be is whether he appoints impartial human rights professionals to be the new chair and the members of the Philippines Commission on Human Rights. Because as you know, the chair and all the previous commissioners have now stepped down. Their terms are up. And so who Bongbong Marcos appoints to that Philippine CHR will be a very clear indication to us and to the international community about whether he intends to be serious about protecting human rights or whether he's going to try to whitewash everything.
Well, Sir Phil, thank you so much for sharing with us your time and your insights. That's Mr. Phil Robertson. He's Deputy Director of Human Rights Watch Asia Division. Thank you. Meanwhile, the Foreign Affairs Department has raised alert level 2 over Sri Lanka due to amid worsening security situation. So this means no overseas Filipino worker shall be deployed to the South Asian country except for those with existing contracts. Despite this, the DFA said the Philippine government has no plans yet to evacuate some 700 Filipinos currently residing in Sri Lanka. The agency noted, though, that it is in constant coordination with the Filipino community in the country through the embassy in Dhaka. Now, Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has fled the country and resigned as protests drastically escalated over an economic crisis. President Bongbong Marcos has ordered the Transportation Department to renegotiate 3 loan deals with China. Transportation Undersecretary Cesar Chavez said Marcos Jr. wants the agency to seek funding for the Subic-Clark Railway project, the Philippine National Railway's South Long Haul project, and the Davao-Digos segment of the Mindanao Railway project. Now, the 3 railway projects were supposed to be funded under China's official development assistance through loan agreements. These, however, are considered withdrawn after the Chinese government failed to act on the funding request by the previous administration. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Riza Diaz. Malacanang has extended the country's current COVID-19 alert levels, which were supposed to expire on Friday, July 15. Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles said the classifications will stay put pending a review by the COVID-19 task force on Monday. Metro Manila, along with most provinces, as well as highly urbanized and autonomous cities, will remain under alert level 1. The COVID-19 alert levels were last updated on June 28, 2 days before President Bongbong Marcos began his term. The Octa Research Group projects that COVID-19 cases in Metro Manila may reach the peak in a week. Octa said that indicators such as the growth rate and the reproduction number are decreasing despite the continued rise in cases. The group noted that infections in NCR were up in the past week despite the lower growth rate of 28% compared to 41% in the previous week. The capital's healthcare utilization rate and ICU occupancy for COVID-19 cases also remained low at 29.6% and 29.6% respectively. Now, more people are now lining up to get vaccinated against COVID-19 as cases rise before the return to in-person classes. JC Cosico with details.
Long lines welcomed COVID-19 vaccinees at the Mandaluyong City Hall on Friday. Catherine, for one, decided to have her 15-year-old daughter inoculated in preparation for face-to-face classes.
Hindi na po natin maiwasan yung mga distancing sa school. Wala na po. Hindi natin makokontrol yung mga bata sa ganung ano. Kaya mas maigi na rin na pabakunan para protection na lang din po nila yun.
Jolita, on the other hand, just received her first booster shot. Apart from it being a work requirement, she decided to get boosted due to increasing COVID-19 infections.
Para po iwas na lang po sa hawa-hawa para po magtibay yung immune system ko.
The Mandaluyong City LGU said the rise in cases and the impending return to in-person classes are driving the increase in vaccinees.
Gusto din nila na mas safe sa kanila. If they're bringing their kids to school, they would rather that they're protected.
As of July 13, over 71 million people have been fully vaccinated in the country, but only around 15.5 million have been boosted. Former NTF advisor Dr. Ted Herbosa underscored the need to ramp up booster vaccination against Omicron subvariants.
The BA5 has what we call immune escape. Now, sometimes even if you're vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and you're not updated, the vaccines are not updated, you can still catch the Omicron subvariant.
So far, the country has 293 cases of the BA.5 subvariant. But infectious disease expert Dr. Ron Chinsulante noted that most are just mild.
In fact, in most countries, na nadaanan na nito na US, South Africa, India, it did not cause hospitalization. So their hospitalization rate was stable.
From July 8 to 14, the Philippines logged over 12,200 COVID-19 infections, or an average of around 1,700 cases daily. That's 40% higher compared to the week prior, with only more than 1,200 average daily infections. The country's national weekly positivity rate is also up at 10.6%, while above the international threshold of 5%. Despite the increase in cases, the Philippines remains to be at low risk for COVID-19, as hospitalizations remain low. For News 5, JC Cosico, We Are One News.
Meanwhile, 3 tourist spots in the country are included among the 25 best islands in the world by Travel Plus Leisure. Island ranked 9th in the world's best island list, followed by the Palawan on the 11th spot and Cebu at 16th. New York-based travel magazine says readers are now eager to return to the islands following COVID-19 lockdown. Secretary Cristina Frasco welcomed the recognition that the country is blessed with natural resources coupled by the warmth and endless talent of Filipinos. And for more updates, visit News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World Online. Visit our website, onenews.ph, for more in-depth analysis. You can also catch One News on Signal Play app. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Riza Diaz. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.